Well, for the 11th consecutive year, the WCC regular season co-champion is the Gonzaga Bulldogs, breaking down this huge win over St. Mary's and discussion about how the WCC tournament is going to be seeded. All right here, Locked On Zags podcast. Don't go away.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome to the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to give you daily reports through another season of Gonzaga Hoops. All right, happy Sunday, happy championship for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. They have defeated Saint Mary's at home, college game day in the house. What an incredible environment we saw on Saturday evening in Spokane. That was an absolute blast to watch. I can't imagine what it was like for those of you who were there. An incredible experience. Sean Farnham was out there crowd surfing during the game. What an environment. And the Zags took care of business. Drew Timme got his 94 feet with Jay Billis during the tent city. That was fantastic to see. The Zags jumped out to a big early lead. We're going to talk about the game, how the Zags were able to mitigate Randy Bennett and the Gaels, what the WCC seeding is potentially going to look like. We're also going to break down a few more facets of this game and what it could mean for the Zags in March, closing out the show talking about the WCC Player of the Year award race and why it is now official. There are no other candidates. Drew Timme should be the WCC Player of the Year. But first, let's talk about this game. Gonzaga wins 77-68 over the Gaels of Saint Mary's. They were up 19 in the first half. It was a good old-fashioned beatdown. This St. Mary's team was entirely out of sorts because of Gonzaga's ability to put pressure on this team. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the second segment, but that 1-2-2 zone defense, three-quarter court defense that they put into place really caused a lot of issues for Aiden Mahaney, for Logan Johnson, for St. Mary's in general. And Gonzaga did it right up until pretty much the last whistle of the game. They were really consistent about running that zone defense, and it really, really seemed to work in a lot of ways. But as we know, St. Mary's is a good basketball team. They're not just going to go quietly into the night. A 19-point halftime lead. It wasn't at halftime, I should say. 19-point lead in the first half, 13-point lead at halftime. There are a lot of teams that crumble in that situation. There are a lot of teams that's it. They're done. The crowd is popping. Everybody's screaming and yelling and whooping and hollering and everything that's going down at the McCarthy Athletic Center, and teams don't rebound from that. St. Mary's did. We knew that they would. We knew that there was a good chance that they weren't going to just sit around and take this, and they came all the way back within 6 in the second half. But while a lot of people were starting to get flashbacks to a few weeks ago when St. Mary's did this exact same thing, started getting downhill toward the basket with the young guards, mostly Aiden Mahaney, and whittled away, got the lead, took the lead, and then never relinquished the lead. That's not what happened here. Gonzaga never let them get that close. Never let them get that close. St. Mary's did not lead in this game. It was a monstrous, outstanding performance from the Zags. And it starts, as it almost always does, with the big fella down low. Drew Timme, 19.6 boards in 31 minutes in this one. 5 of 5 from the free throw line. You absolutely love to see that. Drew Timme has been on a heater from the free throw line the last few weeks. That's a huge thing for him to have kind of found his stroke with heading into the NCAA tournament. He's going to get fouled a lot. He already gets fouled a lot. It's going to continue to happen for him to be able to knock down those free throws. It's an added bonus. I've mentioned this a handful of times on the podcast before. Drew Timme drawing contact and getting the free throw line is an objectively good thing, even if he's not converting at the line. And it made a big difference in this game. Mitchell Saxon played 17 minutes. He only had 3 fouls, but he sat a lot of this game because he was in foul trouble. Drew Timme also getting 5 extra points going to the charity stripe, even better. Timme only had 1 assist in this game, which is a little low for him, but he got the ball and he went to work. It's just they didn't try a ton of doubles with him. They single coveraged him with Mitchell Saxon. They single coveraged him with Kyle Bowen, 2 of the best defensive players in the country. And he went 7 for 11 from the field. It just did not matter. Drew Timme is inevitable in so many ways. Anton Watson, perhaps his finest all-around game. We have said that many, many times this year, which is proof that he's just having a straight up fantastic season. 17 points in 37 minutes for the senior out of Spokane, 8 rebounds, 4 steals, 3 assists, and a block. Once again, continuing to contribute in every single category, offensively and defensively in this game. 7 for 11 from the field, same as Drew Timme, 1 of 2 from deep, also 2 of 3 from the free throw line. And because there needs to be one posterization of a St. Mary's player every single year from Gonzaga, Anton Watson said, I will take the mantle there. Really nice pocket pass from Julian Strother, one bounce. Watson caught it in stride, took a dribble, and hammered it home. Really, really, really nice play from Anton Watson. Got that crowd absolutely going. Last player I want to mention, Malachi Smith, coming off the bench, 13 points, 5 of 6 shooting, knocked down his only 3, had 5 boards, 2 assists, and a block as well. Really, really nice performance from him coming off the bench. So right now, as we're recording this here Sunday morning, the 26th of February, a little bonus episode for you all. St. Mary's is still higher in the net. They're going to be the 1 seed in the WCC tournament, as I understand it. These two teams tied in the regular season, split the series amongst each other, and both lost to LMU. What that means is that they cannot go to any tiebreakers outside of net ranking. The first tiebreaker was who else you lost to. Both teams have the same other loss on their resume, so they go to net rankings. They determined that they're not going to count net rank. They're going to count rankings at the end of the WCC season. So Gonzaga's Wednesday game against Chicago State is not going to factor into this net ranking. It's going to factor in the net rankings overall, but it's not going to factor into how they seed the WCC tournament, which makes sense as the WCC tournament starts on Thursday. They're not going to wait till Gonzaga's Wednesday game to seed the tournament when it just doesn't really matter in that regard anyway. So right now, the Gaels come in at number 7 in the country in the net rankings. The Zags are at 9. We could quibble about who should be higher than that, and certainly an overall quick look at the resumes. I think there's a fair argument there. The Gaels are 24-6 overall. The Zags are 24-5. The Gaels are 2-2 in quad 1 wins. Gonzaga is 5-4, so more wins and a higher winning percentage. For the quad 2 wins, the Gaels are 6-2. The Zags are 5-0, so the Gaels have 1 more win, but 2 more losses there. You combine quad 1 and quad 2. The Gaels are 8-4. The Zags are 10-4. Sure seems like 10-4 is a little bit better there. You look at the quad 3 and quad 4, combine those together. The Gaels are 17-2. The Zags are 14-1. So the Gaels, to reiterate, less quad 1 wins, less quad 1 and quad 2 wins combined, more quad 3 and quad 4 losses, yet they are higher in the net rankings. Not a whole lot we can do about that, although I think it's fair to at least wrinkle your nose at those resumes compared side by side and what the net rankings think of them. I don't know that it matters all that much. Again, the 1 seed and the 2 seed in the WCC tournament get a double bye all the way to the semifinals. The Zags will play somebody out of this group of teams, likely Santa Clara, is going to play either BYU, Pacific, or Pepperdine. Pacific and Pepperdine will play each other. The winner of that game will play BYU. The winner of that game will play Santa Clara. The winner of that game will play Gonzaga. So likely the odds are that Gonzaga is going to play Brandon Podziemski and the Broncos of Santa Clara. They're the best team in that group. I think BYU could absolutely defeat Santa Clara, make a run, and play in the WCC semifinals. BYU is not a team I particularly want to face in Las Vegas, so it's a little bummer that they're on Gonzaga's side. But between BYU and Santa Clara, Gonzaga still has a pretty good chance of moving on. The Gaels on their side, they get LMU, San Francisco, Portland, and San Diego. Again, more than likely, the Gaels will end up playing LMU again for the opportunity to win that game and play Gonzaga or Santa Clara or BYU, whoever ends up making it out of Gonzaga's side for the WCC championship. Certainly setting it up to be another rematch between the Zags and Gaels. And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you try to set up that kind of matchup? It's must-see TV. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper here in the second segment over Gonzaga's win over the Gaels, the 5 key things we listed in that game, whether they came to fruition, why or why not, as well as how some of those strategies we saw Gonzaga implement could help this team as they get into March and the NCAA tournament. Before we get there, though, today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories, then you've got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little bit healthier this year. If you're like me where you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise taste, then I've got just for the thing for you. You've got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious, you won't even think they're good for you. They're perfect for your New Year's resolutions. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box for years. We've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs at your nearest Walmart or Sam's Club today. All right, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags. And I want to thank all of you again for making Locked On Zags your first listen of the day. For your second listen today, check out the Locked On College Basketball podcast. It's almost March. Myself, Isaac Shade, the co-host of that podcast, the host of the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, we're bringing you everything you need to know about college hoops, tournament, preseason tournament stuff, NCAA tournament stuff, all sorts of good stuff coming your way. You can hear from big name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. Locked On College Basketball. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, one of the nice things about doing a bonus episode this week, besides getting you guys some content, some conversation around this team 24 hours earlier than you might have gotten it otherwise, is that we get to actually look back at the 5 keys to the game. Often we spend a segment on Friday previewing that Saturday's game. And because Monday episodes are mailbag, we don't actually get to kind of look back through those keys and see, hey, were those things impactful parts of the game? We get to do that. We get to do that here on the special Sunday episode of Locked On Zags. So we're going to take a look at my 5 keys heading into the game against the Gaels on Saturday and kind of whether those things came together. And it's interesting because a few of these things were monumentally important and some of them didn't really end up making a big difference. We'll start here. Key number 1 was let Julian cook. Well, Julian played 40 minutes in this game. Of course, coming into the game, he was on an absolute hot streak, starting with that 40-point performance against Portland. He's had a couple 30-point games since then, really been on an absolute tear. And he wasn't his best offensively in this game, quite honestly. 2 of 10 shooting, 0 of 4 from deep, 11 points. The reason he got 11 points is because he went 7 of 8 from the free throw line, which was really, really important for Gonzaga in general. Their free throw shooting was fantastic in this game, and they needed every single one of them. So I don't think that this was a particularly bad game from Julian. He just didn't have it. His shot wasn't really there. He also added 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals. The biggest thing that Julian did, though, the Zags were running a 1-2-2 3-quarter court pressure defense. The one in this situation was Julian Strother. That's the spot that he was playing. He was playing the 1, and then the other 2 guards who were on the floor, either Malachi Smith, Rasir Bolton, Nolan Hickman, Hunter South, whoever it was. 2 of those guys were kind of playing the back 2 or the middle 2 spots, and then Drew Timme and Anton Watson were playing kind of at the very back, and they were running these traps, trying to trap guys right as they crossed half court, so they didn't have the ability to throw the ball backwards. Julian was really critical in this role. Like I said, he had a pair of steals. He had a lot of deflections. He got his hands on a lot of balls and really just made life really, really difficult for Aiden Mahaney and Logan Johnson. Wasn't a great performance from him offensively, but he was a really, really he played all 40 minutes, and there's a reason for that. They really, really needed him and what he was able to contribute. And seeing him contribute to this team positively and significantly without having his outside shot or really his offense in general is a really big sign, a really positive sign for this team going forward. Number 2 key against the Gaels in this game was defending the perimeter. Again, another one that wasn't exactly Gonzaga's strength in this one. The Gaels shot 8 of 18 from deep. That's pretty good. It wasn't exactly an issue for them. Kyle Bowen was 1 of 6 because Kyle Bowen's not a very good offensive player, and yet he still took 6 3-pointers in this game. I think Gonzaga is pretty happy with Kyle Bowen missing 5 threes. You'll take that most of the time. The problem is the rest of the team was 7 of 12. So you don't love that. Kyle Bowen missing 5 threes. The whole rest of the team combined only missing 5 threes. That's a bit more of an issue. St. Mary's didn't shoot well around the rim. They're only 50% on 2-pointers. Aiden Mahaney in particular was 1 of 6 on 2-point shots. He knocked down a couple of threes, but 1 of 6 inside the arc. So Gonzaga's perimeter defense, their 3-point shooting defense, wasn't fantastic in this game, but I'll admit St. Mary's also didn't take a huge advantage of this necessarily either. The next key, and this was the big one. There's two really big ones here. Number 3 is and number 4. Pressure defense on the guards. This was the biggest key in this game, hands down. We have been lamenting this for, quite frankly, years. Gonzaga needs to find a way to run a different defense that forces St. Mary's offensively to be out of their comfort zone. Mark Few did this. I don't know if he listened. I don't know if somebody in his ear on the bench kind of said, hey, maybe we should try something a little bit different. But for years, we have seen Gonzaga play a bit more passive defensively and let Randy Bennett's team dictate the pace, run the style of offense that they want to run. They did not do this on Saturday night. They put pressure on Gonzaga or on St. Mary's immediately, forced them to make multiple passes, pass over defenders, all of that stuff. And look, they got a lot of turnovers out of it, but even on the possessions they didn't, the amount of times that St. Mary's actually took advantage and got an easy score because of the pressure was very few. And that to me was pretty surprising. I know that Randy Bennett and St. Mary's want to run their slow, methodical, plodding offense. I understand that that's what they want to do. But when you are facing that kind of pressure, if you can get past the pressure, you have to go straight to the basket. You have to, because otherwise you're not going to get the team out of the defense. If two times in a row, St. Mary's threw over the top of the pressure, forced Drew Timme and Anton Watson to come up to play some pressure defense, and then got an easy lay-in around the rim, managed to get a pass all the way down to Mitchell Saxon or Henry Wessels or Joshua Jefferson or whoever it was down around the rim. If they had been able to do that twice in a row, I almost guarantee you Mark Few pulls off the pressure. I almost guarantee it. But they didn't do that. They did it a few times, periodically sprinkled throughout the game. But most of the time, if they did beat the pressure, Gonzaga got back, set up their man defense, and then just had to play it for 18 seconds instead of 28 seconds because they had put that pressure on earlier. It worked 100% in Gonzaga's favor, and Randy Bennett and the Gaels could not figure out how to change it up. They could not figure out how to get Gonzaga out of it, and it led to a victory. And quite honestly, it was a huge, huge part of what Gonzaga did to win this game. I don't know if we will see Gonzaga implement that defensive strategy in the tournament. It will depend on matchups, but there are absolutely teams out there that are going to play slow, that are going to, try to exploit Gonzaga's poor pick and roll defense and kind of come up the court and take away transition opportunities for the Zags. And in those games, putting this 1-2-2 zone in place, putting pressure, trapping at half court, trying to force the other team to make mistakes and make turnovers feels like a really good strategy that I'm hopeful Mark Few and the staff are willing to implement now that we've seen it work for a full 40 minutes against a very, very good team in St. Mary's. Key number 4, another one that was really, really important in this game, trying to get Mitchell Saxon and Kyle Bowen in foul trouble. Mission accomplished. The Zags did this, and it worked, and it was really, really important part of the game. Saxon only had 3 fouls, but he only played 17 minutes. That's it. This is a guy who's expected to get votes for Defensive Player of the Year in the WCC. He played 17 minutes. He committed his 3rd foul within the first 2 minutes of the second half and had to go to the bench. That was huge. Kyle Bowen fouled out of this game. Now, he fouled out in 35 minutes, so he played the majority of the game, but he played a huge chunk of this game in foul trouble. And that is a big part of it too. You don't just want to talk about getting a player fouled out of a game. Making them play with foul trouble is huge. Kyle Bowen's the best defensive player on this team. He's probably the WCC Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year. It's going to be between him and Anton Watson. It's going to be close. It's going to be close between those two guys. But for Kyle Bowen to have to play huge chunks of this game in foul trouble, it showed. He had to be less aggressive. He couldn't do some of the stuff that he likes to do. And it was a huge advantage for Gonzaga down low, around the perimeter, every single way. Henry Wessels was St. Mary's backup big. He played 5 minutes in this game, and he wasn't very good. He missed a couple of bunnies around the rim. He had one nice reverse lay-in, but he didn't look great. Joshua Jefferson, their other freshman, he played pretty well. 9 points, 3 of 4 shooting in 23 minutes. He looks solid, and he's going to be a big piece for this team in the next couple of years, but their depth is questionable, and for Gonzaga to force them to play some of those guys more minutes than they were probably wanting to play them, that made a difference in this game, a big one. Key number 5, this one didn't really come to fruition in this one. Big Ben Greg game. I was hoping we would see Baby Ben step out and do kind of what we saw him do against San Diego, maybe hit some outside shots, grab some offensive rebounds, force St. Mary's defenders to come away from the rim because of his outside shooting. Just wasn't a factor. He didn't have a particularly bad game. He only played 6 minutes. That's it. Anton Watson played 37 minutes. Drew Timme played 31 minutes. The Zags were willing to go small with Anton Watson at the 5, Julian Strother at the 4. We hadn't seen much of that this year, despite it being a popular talking point before the season. So it just meant that Ben didn't really play. 0 points in 6 minutes. He was fine. He didn't really make any mistakes. They decided to rely on Timme and Watson. And I understand why. I think that's fine. Hunter Salas only played 11 minutes. He had 5 points on perfect shooting, though. Not a bad performance from Hunter Salas. There are not a lot of bad performances from Hunter Salas. That's pretty rare to see from him. Had a couple fouls that were a bit questionable, but that is what it is. But for Gonzaga, the bench, there's only one impactful bench player, and we talked about him already. It's Malachi Smith. He was fantastic in this game. Really, really nice performance from him. Ben Gregg, Hunter Salas, neither of them played poorly. They just only played a combined 17 minutes, so it just wasn't a big factor for them in this one. All right, we're closing up the show discussing the WCC Player of the Year award, which just got locked up. Drew Timme locked this thing up. This award is going to him. We're going to talk about why coming up right after this. All right, segment 3, still many patents, still locked on Zags. We're talking WCC Player of the Year. The conference season is over. And we did an episode earlier this week, or earlier last week, I believe it was, predicting the awards. Who's going to win the Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Newcomer of the Year, who's going to be on the All-WCC first team. And we're going to do it again. Before we get the award nominees, if we get an opportunity to do so, I would like to talk about this, kind of make some projections, or at least react to the awards as they come out. But the big one is Player of the Year. And it's Drew Timme's award. I don't know that there is you can't really make an argument otherwise anymore. You just can't. There's 3 other players that have been in this conversation. And Tuck Clary wrote up a really nice article at The Slipper Still Fits. It was his 10 observations from the St. Mary's game. Those are always worth reading. If you don't read them, it's either him or Keith or many other people who write them at The Slipper. But fantastic content. And reading Tuck's article, he talked about how basically, I think the way he phrased it was people trying to look for somebody else to win WCC Player of the Year. They're just being cute. You're trying to find somebody else who you think deserves this award over Drew Timme, and you're trying to force it. And at this point, I just don't think you can force it anymore. I just don't think there's a compelling enough argument for anybody else. Drew Timme's 21.2 points per game is tied for first in the conference along with LMU point guard Cam Shelton. Drew Timme's 7.5 rebounds is 4th in the conference. Drew Timme's 3.2 assists is 9th. Drew Timme is top 10 in the WCC in points, rebounds, and assists. He's top 5 in points and rebounds, and he is 1st in points per game. Field goal percentage, 61.6. That is, you guessed it, 1st in the WCC. His effective field goal percentage of 61.9, that's also 1st. Drew Timme did all of this, his field goal percentage, his points, his rebounds, all of that with a 29.9% usage rate. You guessed it, that is 1st in the WCC as well. So he's the most used player. He has the highest field goal percentage. He has the highest effective field goal percentage. He scores the most points per game. He grabs the 4th most rebounds per game. He's a better point guard or a better distributor, a better assist player than most or a lot of the guards in the entire WCC. And he's on a team that finished with the best record in the conference, tied with St. Mary's, yes, but the best record in the WCC. Regular season champion, points leader, top rebounder, highest field goal percentage. It is hard to find a way to argue against that. We'll try with the 3 other candidates who have been kind of mentioned as potential award winners here. Cam Shelton, already talked about him. Yeah, tied for 1st in the conference in scoring. That is fantastic. For a team that beat BYU, St. Mary's, and Gonzaga this year. We've talked about this on this podcast, but just in case you missed it, that's never happened before. This is the only time it's ever going to happen because BYU is moving out the door to the Big 12. Only team to ever beat all 3 of those programs in the same year is the 2022-2023 LMU Lions, led by point guard Cam Shelton. 21.2 points per game. His 4.2 assists per game is 3rd. His effective field goal percentage is 6th. Not bad. 54.9, not bad at all. He's 3rd in win shares. He's 2nd in offensive win shares. Timme is 1st in offensive win shares, so Shelton's right behind him. Brandon Podziemski, who we'll talk about momentarily, is 1st in overall win shares. So Cam Shelton, absolutely in the conversation for one of the best players in the WCC. Does any of that convince you that he's over Drew Timme? Worst team, worst field goal percentage, barely more assists despite playing the point guard position, tied for the same number of scoring. I'm not sure I see the case there. Brandon Podziemski is next. And his case is a little bit weaker, quite honestly. I think there's a very strong case for Brandon Podziemski to be the 2nd best NBA draft prospect in the WCC. Doesn't necessarily get you any awards, although he's going to be a first teamer, certainly. Same with Maxwell Lewis, who is the number 1 draft prospect in the WCC. You could make an argument Podziemski's second and Strother's third. I think it's very close between those two guys. But Podziemski, 19.9 points per game. That's third behind Drew Timme and Cam Shelton, as you'd imagine. 8.8 rebounds. That's first. Now, that's first because they're not counting Eric Williams at San Diego because he hasn't played enough games, but he's averaging like 9.5 rebounds per game. Semantics. Doesn't really matter. Podziemski, top 5 scorer, third, top 5 rebounder, first, 6th in the conference in assists at 3.4 per game. His 57.6 effective field goal percentage is 4th, and in win shares, he's first. Fantastic case right there for Brandon Podziemski. His team, they did finish third. That's solid. Third place team, third in most of, third or lower in most of the important categories. All WCC first teamer? Absolutely. Would he be an all WCC first teamer if the team shrank from 10 to 5? Absolutely. Is he going to win the WCC player of the year? Nope. He shouldn't, at least. Shouldn't win it over Cam Shelton. Should not win it over Drew Timme. And then the final candidate who I think hurt his chances on Saturday evening in Spokane, and that's Aiden Mahaney. Quite honestly, I'm not sure I ever saw the case for Aiden Mahaney. I know that there's a very surface level case. The surface level case was he's the point guard on the team that's in first place in the WCC. That was the case. Now he's the point guard on a team that's tied for first in the WCC, which is still a pretty solid case, but that's kind of it. He's not top 10 in scoring. He's not top 10 in assists. He's not top 10 in rebounds in any of them. Not being top 10 in assists, I know he's not much of a distributor, but he's averaging 2 assists per game. Drew Timme is averaging more than 1 assist per game more than Aiden Mahaney. That's a noteworthy stat, I would imagine. Again, that's not necessarily what Mahaney's being asked to do, so I understand that. And also St. Mary scores way, way less points. So him being, 14.5 points per game is still very good, and it's just outside the top 10 in the WCC. But again, how many points you score matters, and even if you're on an offense that doesn't score as many points, it still matters. His effective field goal percentage, 53.1, is 9th in the conference, so he is an efficient scorer. But again, not the most efficient scorer, not more efficient than any of the 3 guys we've already discussed. He's shooting 41% from deep. That's fantastic. And he's won some games. Turnaround jumper against BYU was a game winner. He won the game for Gonzaga, or for St. Mary's against Gonzaga in Moraga. He did it. Anybody who watched that game, there's not any debate. Aiden Mahaney won the game for the Gaels. That is a certifiable fact that that's what happened. Is that enough for you to win WCC Player of the Year? No, not when you didn't do it a second time. If he'd done it a second time, which, man, I know a lot of you thought he was going to. I did too. I did too. It felt like it. It felt like that's the direction we were going when he hit those 2 threes, and then he had that one left-handed lay and was like, oh boy, we're doing it again. But then it didn't happen. The Zags stepped up. They played better defense. That 1-2-2 zone kind of kept him out of his comfort zone, and they won. And they won because Drew Timme had a really good game, and Aiden Mahaney had an okay game. That's kind of it. To me, this is Drew Timme's award. I don't know that this is going to shock anybody that that's the direction that we're leaning, but because there was so much conversation this season about, oh, it's Drew Timme or Brandon Podziemski, or it's Drew Timme or Cam Shelton, or hey, what about Aiden Mahaney? Maybe he deserves to be in the conversation. We can have that conversation. We just did. I'm happy to have the conversation, but at the end of the day, you're not changing my mind. And after this, I'm not sure anybody's mind should be in any different direction than Drew Timme winning this award. All right, that is going to do it for me today. Happy bonus episode on Sunday. Guess what? Mailbag Monday still happening. We're still going to do it. So if you're listening to this on Sunday and there is not an episode coming out on Monday yet, shoot me a question. You can reach out to me on Twitter at AndyPattonCBB. You can find me on email, andypatton013@gmail.com. Get me those questions. Love to get them out ahead of time on Monday morning for that fantastic show. And that's going to do it for us today. So Zags fans, revel in the victory. Enjoy a Farnham flatbread if you have not had one yet. Enjoy fantastic imagery of Sean Farnham floating through the kennel. Folks going crazy at 6 a.m. It was a beautiful, beautiful sight to behold. I cannot wait. We got one more week till Vegas. If you're going there, let me know. I'll be there Sunday through Tuesday. Very, very excited to get a chance to watch the Zags in person at the New Orleans Arena. So check it out and go Zags.